Hello, we are here for one more lesson of this AxisVM training course, and the topic for today will be the icon toolbar. So this is the big toolbar we have on the left. I'll try not to make a very long video because there are a lot of topics to see inside this toolbar. So we will see the main items, and it would be important to complement all of this information that you could see our theoretical course, or also in case of need for support to ask us for any points not clear or that we may not mention here in the video. Just to mention equally that later in the end of this course, in the end of the lessons, we will release also a couple of examples, and as you might imagine, these examples, among other things, will have also parts that use these commands, these options that are present in this icon toolbar. So, without further delays, to say that this icon toolbar has a couple of properties. One of these interesting properties is the dragging and the docking of the toolbar. So we can drag this to any place in work environment. And on the same way, if we go to the left of the drawing area, it will dock again in the same place. So this to mention that the software is highly possible to define by the user. Now going down, starting with this first icon that it's called the selection, and as the name says, it's used to select, so it's a selection mode, and when we click, it displays this selection toolbar that basically has a couple of options. The first one, the select, which allows us to click in elements and select, okay, simply. This minus will act on the opposite direction, so the deselect. In here we invert whatever it is selected. We can make the selection of all elements, so in this case if we invert it will unselect everything, okay. Then we have an option to restore the previous selection set in here. An option to the selection of parts. So I don't have currently any parts possible to make a selection. So the parts are kind of groups of entities, so we don't have any currently defined, and we will see them later in this icon below. In here we have the filter, and the filter allows us to choose from the type of elements, and we can use also some properties of what is currently in the drawing area or selected to make groups of selection through filters, which is interesting. And we have also what we call the method of selection, which can be done in several ways, like this rectangular one, which allows us to open a selection. And when we open these windows, you see that from the right to the left opens a window that is continuous, so everything it touches it selects, and on the opposite direction it's this dotted line this selection will touch and select, the other one will have to be completely inside. And then we have other variations like this slanted window with sectors and with the ring, so basically are the same options but with different shapes. And we have also this interesting one, which are lines that will select everything they cross. So a couple of interesting features to use as selections. I may take a little more time on these explanations because I have some notes and I need to see the notes that I'm talking about. So because this is a very long video and it's needed to have these notes. Then we have a couple of more options also about not this one but about the second one, which is called the zoom. And the zoom has basic functions also. First one, zoom in, so simply something like this. The zoom out, okay. Then we have this one, which is a fit. In here, a pen that we can have also clicking in the right mouse button. The rotation and the previous mode. So these are simple modes that we have almost in all softwares to manipulate graphical areas. Below we have these small icons which basically correspond to the same options we have inside that toolbar. Okay, we can for sure use the mouse like I told to make a pen, or the mouse wheel to make also this manipulation here. And to get out of this, just do an escape and you'll be out of this. Then we have these views, okay. We can set these to the standard views, like each one of these plan views. So you choose what you want, or we can go to this 3D view, which is, in my perspective, in the majority of the occasions, the one that I personally prefer to see the model. We have also this possibility to make a split of the 4 views, which I don't want in this particular case, but it's also a possibility to work in terms of the display. Going to the next one, we go to something called the display mode. And the display mode allows us to display the model in different ways. The one that is called wireframes, which is what we have. We have another one called the hidden, that displays a wireframe model drawing with hidden lines removed. Then we have some parameters to set this display, okay. We have this one called the render, and the render does something like this, okay. It depends on the model, and it depends on what and how you are working to have also these possibilities on or not. So the render displays a rendered model drawing, and in this mode the line elements are displayed with their actual cross sections and with the actual thicknesses. So it's another interesting mode to work with. we can set a couple of options also in view rendering options. We have items here which we can manipulate about the display. You can explore a little about these options here. And finally, we have this mode, which is the texture mode. Probably in this particular case there is no difference, but texture mode is a rendered view using the textures assigned to the individual material. So this particular case probably I don't have any, so I don't have any difference in terms of the view. But for example, if I make just to show one element, something like this, the material, let us choose a material, materials. Let's try to choose something, okay, like this. And if we do it, okay, it is done. Let us try to view it. You can see that I have, it doesn't matter what it is in this particular item, but you can see that I have a rendered mode different from what I was seeing here. So again, 2D, and I'm back to the basic display. Okay, and this is for the display mode. Then we move forward to something called the color coding, which in fact helps to get an overview of the element properties. And this different color coding can be set for the rendered and wireframe display modes. Make a brief overview out of this. So we can set the options. For example, we can have these kind of elements, okay? Domains, line elements, domains here, surface support, surface loads, line elements, whatever it is. For example, line elements, we can set these different types. So architectural type, and you see that according to each of the types, the configurations change, or material views, or cross sections, whatever it is below. Okay, let us leave it this to architectural type. So in this architectural type, just a brief note, determines the element color. For the material, the colors are assigned by material, in thickness assigned by thickness, and so on. So it's quite basic. But the important here is that you can play with these options to display the colors. So for example, you can set the default colors, or you can work around this with this color gradient, where we play a little with the colors, okay, and these are changed, and I can go back to the default. Or I can work also with these random colors, okay, and the system will create random colors. Or I can set a common color, which is I have to select more than one cell, so not very important, just a notion that we have these possibilities also to play with the colors. So if I say, I don't know, whatever it is, beams, so domains, this one for example in blue, and you see the color changes, so, and back to defaults, and here it is. Next group, it is something called geometric transformations. So this is also more or less similar to what we have in other softwares. This is used to manipulate and to transform the elements that we have present in the software. So we have a couple of options. The first one, it is the translation. This toolbar, you know it already, is to make the selection. So I will choose this guy here, for example. I could make everything. I don't want everything. Okay, so let me choose this guy. Then we can have these options, which more or less are common to most of these transformations with different looks. This method is common to most of them, so we have a couple of options. The incremental, which creates several copies. We can say, for example, 3 copies. The distribute, that makes X number of copies of the selected entities along the distance, so we give a distance. We can spread by the distance, so we can say that the distance is whatever it is. We have another option called consecutive, which makes next number of consecutive copies by different distances. So we can have these kind of things, and graphically it is nice to see what it is. A simple move, or something called the detach, which moves the entity or the entities by distances into the the lines move without the nodes or the points going attached to the elements that we are moving. Let's try to make a simple move. So base point here, target point here, so, and we've moved. Another example, so if we choose it, so incremental, we can see 3 copies, whatever it is. Okay, base point, and you see that things are growing as we want. This is more or less common with the other ones. Let us see before we see the other options. The things about the nodes that I was mentioning on the detach option. Okay, we can choose each one of these options and mentioning or referring to the system how the nodes will behave relating to the elements that we are working. And you see that we can connect no nodes or double selection or everything. Okay. Still about these transformations, so we have the rotation, which is pretty much the same. So let's try to do an incremental. So rotation center point, it is here, and okay, we are rotating. Then we have something, the mirror, which is pretty much the same, just for a mirror operation. And finally also a scale operation that will do a similar function. Now we have a group called the work plans, and the work plans makes the work of user easier to draw oblique plans. So we have a lot of different options. This is something that you can explore for sure. We can create parallel plans to these standard ones, okay? We can also choose these options, the general one or the smart one. I will show you with the smart one, because while the general work plans are defined by an origin and two vectors, these smart work plans follow the local system of one element, and they are more easy created. So I think it's a good example. So I can choose this element here. So I can choose this element, or maybe let's try a different thing. Sorry, let's try a general. Maybe it's easier. So WP A. So, and I will mention to define this direction and the positive. You see the work plan growing, and we have a list where we can manage the work plan. So we can say what kind of work plan it is this. So we can manage the information related to the origin and the directions that we choose and see, okay. And you get the orientation that the work plan we've created has. So it's easier to now to draw and create elements, because we have the orientation of the work plan. So it's a very nice function, and I think you, if you start working with these work plans and testing your your elements, your work here, you'll have you'll see the use that you can give to this function. Following the commands we have in this icon toolbar, so we go to another thing called the grid. We have two functions here also. We can create grids, and the grids is something that you use as reference and as help to your work. Let's try to create this first option, which is called the structural grid, and another second option, which is kind of a custom grid. Okay, one or the other, they are not much difficult to manage and to create. So we can add one grid, so we can choose the orientation of this structural grid. We need to give it a name, so let's say grid A. We can choose a different color from what we have around here. We can say that we want, as an example, lines of the grid in these points, okay, and on the other, for example, like this, for example, and pick up origin. Where is a node? Okay, a node, it's here. Okay, and we have the grid it's created, so we can manage this. I'm not sure. Okay, and you can see display structural grids. Sorry, I did not have this option on. It's not very okay. We have these point that it was the origin defined by me, and we have these options, the letters in each of the lines that I've created, the distances. So okay, to this side and the other side, so in X and Y, and you can see the grid here. We could do pretty much the same in the other option. This is a custom grid, so with a little with some differences, but I think to start this custom but more regular grid, it is nice for the majority of users. So I would recommend for now to stay in this one, and later you can explore this second option, and for sure we should have also examples where we can show the use of the other function of the grid. So in terms of grids, we are okay also. And then we have something called the guidelines. The guidelines are tools that help in the addition of the geometry. And these guidelines can be defined in the global coordinate system, and they can make a network of lines that help the user. So, for example, we have this one that places a vertical guideline. So you see this little line that is appearing, horizontal one, then a cross which we can place somewhere. Okay, this is an oblique, and we can give it a point and a second point somewhere. Okay, doesn't matter where. And finally also a cross, but we can define the orientations of the guidelines. So this is another nice tool to help you in the drawing process. Then we have this group called the geometry tools. These icons of the geometry tools allows you to lock the direction of drawing line. So basically, when we are drawing elements, we get these helps: the perpendicular, the parallel, the normal to a plane, and so on, which allow us to draw something. Choose one element or whatever you have, and you see, okay, you see that I have a line appearing here with the option. So it's a very easy tool, so I think it's not very difficult for you to explore, so I will leave it the details for your exploration. Another important group called the dimension lines, symbols and labels. This group of functions lets you assign dimensions basically, and other informations more. So when we click, we get this new toolbar, so we can go and place dimensions with this, okay, with all these options. There are some variations, like this one, text, so we click a point and assign a text, or this one that puts this kind of information, or this one that puts another type of information. There are some variations which we should see. So if we click twice in either of these, we get parameters. So these are behavior parameters for doing a lot of things here. And it is important to mention also, and these parameters, okay, I've clicked only one, but you see that we have a lot of things to explore about any of these parameters. We have also the option to see, to make labels in ISO lines, okay? We should have the results in here to show regarding the results. I don't want to save, which is so let me show you. I will need to save this. Let me save it. Okay. Yes. So now, okay, let us see. Okay, good. So we have a couple of results, and we can see this in ISO lines. Okay, and this last function of the dimensions, ISO lines, allow us to create some label. Yes, where it is. So for example, you see that it puts some informations in the points that I've choose in the ISO lines, like this. Okay, so it is something also to put information about these ISO lines. Moving forward, we have this function that we've seen in one of the previous lessons, that has to do with the addition of the background layers. So I will not refer to this function in particular. Let me, okay, the ISO lines, it is okay, no problem. Then we have another function called the renaming and the renumbering. And with this function, some of the elements like the nodes, the trusses, the beams, the ribs, the domains, they can be renumbered and renamed. So if I go here, I can choose them all, and then I have the possibility to renumber them. So we can start on the 10, okay, and A, whatever it is, and they can be renamed. I haven't done it, but you see what is to be done. Another function in terms of the parts, in the part, if you remember, on the selection set, on the selection, you have one of the choices were parts. So if you have them created here, then you are able to create parts. Parts are groups, and they can be grouped by the user, or they can be created more or less automatically. So we can create a new name, and for example, you can choose all the elements, create a new group, and we can manage this for sure. So if you go to selection now we have already parts, we have a group. So this is a kind of a group to make it easier for your understanding. But the purpose of these parts, we can manage easier the pre and the post processing because of the choice of the elements. Okay, So it's another interesting function to manage some information, and for sure we will have also some examples showing what is possible to be done with these groups of things. Then we reach to this function called the sections. And sections, it is interesting because lets you create section lines, plans and segments. And you can create these sections through any surface model, and they will represent the results. Okay, we have one section already done, so we have a couple of parameters here. I'm not sure where this section it is shown, but I will create a new one. So new section plan, so I will call it A. I will choose a couple of points. So let me choose it here, and okay, down here. So A, and we can see, let's try to rotate a little. Okay. Oh, so the section was already there, but I haven't seen it, so I will delete my section because I have the other one there and it was already created. So these sections will show the results through the section that we've just created. Let's try to rotate this a little. Okay, you see, and you can see whatever you have or whatever you want to. So for example, I don't know, okay, this one, yeah, you can see whatever you want in terms of the results through these sections. So basically it is done with that purpose. There are a couple of configurations inside. There are a couple of configurations that we can have. So we can have this modify and change the section, but basically with a couple of options it is what we can do about this. Then we reach to a function called virtual beams, and virtual beams, it is below, it is here. Virtual beams, virtual strips. A virtual beam, it is used for a beam-like representation of the results of what you have. So we can create a new virtual beam. I will call it virtual beam A. And the domain, I'll choose all of them. Okay, done. And we have a couple of parameters to create this representation. Okay, it depends on what you want. For now, simply choose this center line, and here it is. Let me try to show you. Okay, you see this line here, this line, it is my virtual beam. We have just a brief notion here. The virtual strips are like virtual beams, but sections do not run until the domain edge on the left and on the right side. It is with a fixed strip or width. So if we want to create a virtual, in this particular case, virtual strip, so virtual strip A. We can choose, for example, this one through this one, so center line also, and we can have a representation of this, but it is similar with the virtual strip, but it has some differences regarding regarding the points that are lied in different domains. So this is there are some topics that sometimes are not so easy to explain in some of these. It is something that I would like very much that you could see the examples that we will have later on in this course, because for sure it will help you to see even regarding the examples, less crowded models, with less lines, so that you can see also, among other things, also these virtual strips and the use that you can have about them. Then we have this find option. This find, it will look for a specified index, and for example, node, we can search for the node number 2 and select it, and okay, and you see that selected this particular node. So it will find a particular item from the ones that are inside our model, and it will move for it. Display options. So we have 3 different tabs regarding the symbols. So we have a lot of things to choose from, seeing or not seeing. The labels also, we can choose to, I'm not sure where are all the things, and this is a little crowded by elements, so it's not very easy to show, but for example, we can show the numbering of the nodes, or even better, of the beams. Okay, let us put all of this, because probably we should have, I was trying to show you, still not on site, or the virtual beam, because we've created one. And the properties, write values to nodes. I think this way we'll have something. Okay, we have some informations. It's not very easy to show, very small, and no need to change all of this. But basically these are display options regarding the labels of things. It is a model that was not created by us, so I'm not completely sure of everything what is inside. So we can set all of these things, and for sure something will appear. And finally, the switches, where, for example, we can have a color legend, and it is something like this, where this graduation of colors appears to help us to see the scale of things that are in the drawing area. Moving to another option, here it is something called, in fact, the options. And the options allow the selection of the definition regarding the grid, the cursor, some drawing parameters. So grid and cursor, the display that we want to have. So for example, grid lines, you see these lines here. I can have a dotted grid, so it changed the way it is displayed. Regarding edition, also some different possibilities, because it allows us to make some choices on the edition, like the search pattern for the cursor, couple of parameters for the angles, and the recognition of some particularities when doing edition. And regarding drawing, also to make some definitions about display sizes of load symbols, and symbology of the loads, of the moments, of the lines. So a couple of important things, but some of them details for probably for your present status in the software. Finally, something called model info. And model info, it is a resume of everything we have in our model. So these kind of informations, model size, the creation, and some statistics for what is present. We have also some parameter analysis, which allows to see this kind of information regarding the calculation itself. So I think it's also interesting to see what is going on. I don't want to take this video any longer because it's already quite long. Please be aware of future releases we have regarding examples inside Axis. Some of these parameters will be displayed and mentioned in those videos, and probably will help more and will be a complement of this long video with all these parameters. So I hope that all the explanations were clear enough. Some of them probably were a little confused, but any help, any support you may need, so you know how to reach us, and you can ask us for all the necessary support.